So when you're doing these Trex rail kits, it doesn't matter if it's the basic ones or the high-end ones with the infill. You can think about them in the same way, basically. All the components are very, very similar. On the higher end ones, it'll have an infill piece right here. And then you could do like glass or whatever it is you want to do. But the idea of these is going to work out the same as far as install goes. And then you need to be aware that a 6-foot section isn't really 6 feet, and an 8-foot section isn't really 8 feet, right? So they're actually a little bit short of that. So keep that in mind. And then what I do is I just take this and I line it up right here, side to side. Now I can take my square to the edge of my hole and I can measure from the post right there, right? And I can do the same thing over here. So it'll be something like that. And then I'll slide up and I'll trace that. Slide up, trace that. Flip the bottom over. Make a hole, 3/16 right in the center. That's for your little foot block. And then I cut that and I use that to trace my top piece. If I'm unsure if there's something a little tweaky, then I'll cut my bottom and then I'll hold it into the top and make sure that it fits. Then I'll trace it and trace my top piece. And when I trace, I just line up my holes right here with the top rail. And then I just trace, and then use the chop saw real quick. Bam, bam. And then for me and Aaron, usually I'll go through and I'll cut pieces as we're going. And then he's usually installing. So then he'll take this piece and he'll actually find his own hole and drill it, 3/16. And then he attaches the hardware because these all come with a little piece of hardware, right? And this is the foot block that I'm talking about. This supports the bottom, the middle of the bottom of your rail. So this doesn't sag over time, right? So that's your foot block. And they have them for horizontal and stair runs. And then this is your little hardware kit. And even though they might look a little different and they might sit in the rail a little bit differently, all your rail components are very similar. It doesn't matter what brand or style of rail that you use, right? It's all a very similar concept. So once you install a couple rails, it's not that hard at all, right? So that's your basic install right there. And that's the general rundown of how I find my numbers. And if you just look, you can see how stuff's connected, right? So you can see right here, that's one of these. Same thing there. And then for this particular rail, you want to make sure, because the top rail is wider than the bottom rail, right? So you want to make sure that you're on the bottom of the bottom rail and the bottom of the top rail, because you don't want your hardware up here, right? So just think about that. I'm sure at some point in time we've drilled holes in the wrong sides of rails before. I think it happens whenever you're learning something. You're bound to make mistakes, right? So anyways, that's your general rundown of rails. And this is a basic Trex Select railing. But all rails are pretty much the same. They're all the same idea to install. Thanks for watching.